It was a busy Saturday morning at the downtown bus station, the kind of morning where every face seemed glued to their own hurried routine. Earbuds in, eyes down, everyone racing against invisible clocks. James had just stepped off the bus, hands full with his briefcase and a coffee cup that was already starting to sweat, when he noticed a woman struggling with an armful of bags so heavy it looked like she was trying to carry her entire life on her shoulders. She staggered slightly, muttering to herself under the weight, and in that fleeting moment, something in James stirred. Most people walked past without a second glance, their eyes fixed on their phones or the ground, absorbed in their private worlds. But James, for reasons he couldn't explain, stopped. He approached cautiously, offering a smile that was both tentative and genuine, the kind that says, "Do you need help?" The woman looked up, startled at first, then relief saw her features, and she nodded quickly. "Oh yes, thank you," she said, her voice weary but tinged with gratitude. He took some of her bags, feeling the immediate weight of responsibility, but also a strange lightness in doing something for someone else. A warmth that seemed to push away the morning chill. As they navigated the crowded station, James found himself stealing glances at her face. There was a story there, lines of worry etched in the corners of her eyes, but also a quiet resilience. He didn't ask questions he didn't need to. Sometimes words weren't necessary to acknowledge someone's struggle. The air smelled faintly of damp asphalt and roasted coffee beans, the typical urban Saturday scent, but it didn't bother him. His focus was entirely on making sure her steps were steady, that none of the bags slipped or tore under the strain. They reached a taxi stand, and she paused, fumbling for her wallet. I don't even know how to thank you," she said, her voice catching slightly. James shrugged lightly, a small laugh escaping. "No thanks needed. Just trying to help," he replied. But the woman insisted. She dug into her purse and pulled out a small notebook, flipping it open and scribbling something hurriedly before handing it to him. Confused, James took it. On the page was a phone number, and above it a single sentence, "For the kindness you didn't have to show." He stared at it, unsure what to make of the gesture, then looked up to find the taxi door closing as she slid in, waving quickly before disappearing into the morning traffic. He felt a curious mix of satisfaction and emptiness at the same time, the kind that lingers when a fleeting connection touches you more than you expect. Walking back toward the street, James's thoughts were interrupted by the soft chime of his phone. A message from an unknown number read, "I hope this finds you well. I meant what I wrote in the notebook." Kindness doesn't go unnoticed. His heart skipped a beat. The city that felt so impersonal, so fast and uncaring, had, in that brief encounter, revealed a small but significant truth. Humanity wasn't lost. It was just waiting for moments like this to shine through. As he walked on, James felt lighter than he had in months, the mundane worries of bills, deadlines, and errands slipping into the background. That single act of helping a stranger, simple and unremarkable in the eyes of the world, had given him a clarity he didn't know he was missing. And in that clarity, he realized something important. Sometimes it isn't grand gestures that restore faith in humanity, it's the little acts of connection. The brief instances where one person chooses to see another, to acknowledge them, and to offer help without expectation. He knew, deep down, that he wanted to carry that feeling forward, to make it part of how he navigated life. Because for once, he had felt the profound, almost indescribable impact of simple human kindness. If you've ever wondered whether helping someone truly makes a difference, or if the world is too busy to notice, then stay with us for the next chapter of James's story. James couldn't stop thinking about her all day. The stranger whose name he didn't even know, yet whose face seemed to linger in his mind like a quiet echo that refused to fade. He went about his routine emails, calls, errands, but the notebook in his pocket felt heavier than any bag he had ever carried, not with weight, but with meaning. He kept reading the short notes she had left, over and over. Kindness doesn't go unnoticed. It was such a small thing, yet it resonated in him more than anything else that week. Every time he saw someone struggling, his mind flashed back to the morning and the woman with her overloaded bags. He found himself opening doors for strangers, picking up a dropped scarf for someone, even letting a mother with a stroller go ahead of him at the coffee shop. Each act was tiny, almost imperceptible, yet he noticed the way people's faces changed. The brief pause in their expression, the startled gratitude, the soft smiles that appeared when no one expected them. It was addictive in a way, The way kindness could ripple outward, touching people without you ever realizing how far it would go. Later that evening, James returned home, exhausted but restless, unable to shake the feeling that he had been given something far more valuable than just the fleeting satisfaction of helping someone. His phone buzzed again, the same unknown number lighting up the screen. "I hope your day was as kind as the one you gave me," the message read. James's fingers hovered over the keyboard, unsure whether to reply. There was a strange vulnerability in that brief message, a trust extended across the anonymity of the city. He typed back something simple. It was, "Thank you for reminding me." And just like that, a conversation began. Small messages exchanged throughout the evening, gradually revealing pieces of her life. Her name was Emma. She worked nights at a shelter for women in the city, and her days were spent carrying more than just physical burdens. She carried the weight of others' pain, their struggles, their fears. James realized that the bags he helped her with were more than groceries or clothes. They were a symbol of the emotional load she bore silently every day. He felt humbled, seeing how much she gave to people she barely knew, how little acknowledgement she received in return, how her quiet resilience kept her moving forward. Over the next few days, James found himself actively looking for ways to help, not for recognition, not for a return favor, but because he had felt firsthand how one small act could change the course of someone else's day, even their life. He began volunteering at the local library, helping elderly patrons carry books, reading to children who struggled with literacy, and offering a friendly smile to anyone who seemed lost in the rush of the city. The more he gave, the more he felt a sense of purpose, a connection to the world that had been missing from his life for so long. One evening, as he sat by his window, watching the city lights flicker, Emma's name appeared on his phone again. She wanted to meet in person, to thank him properly, she said, though he insisted she didn't have to. When they finally met at a quiet cafe, she was instantly recognizable from that Saturday morning, a little tired but radiant in a way that only comes from someone who carries their burdens with grace. They talked for hours, sharing stories of struggles and triumphs, laughter and tears, discovering how two strangers had intersected at the perfect moment, each leaving an indelible mark on the other. James realized then that the city was full of Emmy's people silently struggling, unnoticed, weighed down by life, but also full of opportunities for simple acts of kindness, if only someone stopped long enough to see them. By the end of the night, as they parted ways with a promise to stay in touch, James felt something shift inside him. The encounter had grown into a friendship, a mutual understanding that kindness wasn't transactional, it was transformative. And though he hadn't known it at the time, helping Emma carry her bags had set in motion a chain of events that would ripple far beyond that ordinary Saturday morning. He looked around at the bustling city streets, at the people walking past each other in their silent routines, and he felt a renewed sense of hope. Maybe, just maybe, humanity wasn't lost after all. Maybe it was alive in those moments when strangers chose to notice each other, when they chose to care without expectation, when they chose to act simply because it was the right thing to do. And in that thought, he found a quiet joy that no amount of stress or fatigue could diminish. If you've ever doubted that a small gesture could change someone's life, then keep watching, because James is about to discover something that goes even deeper, something that will restore his faith in humanity in a way he never imagined. The following week, James found himself thinking more about Emma and the impact of that single morning than he had expected. It was strange how one small act could echo so loudly in a life that had been running on autopilot for months. He noticed it in small ways. He paused for a homeless man who was asking for spare change. He helped a mother juggle grocery bags on a crowded sidewalk. He even smiled at people who seemed absorbed in their screens to notice anyone else. But the universe, as if to test whether his newfound outlook was genuine, had a bigger lesson in store. On a gray Thursday afternoon, the city streets were slick with drizzle, and James was hurrying to pick up his dry cleaning when he noticed a commotion outside a busy cafe. A young boy, no more than 10, was crying as a man shouted at him from across the street. People were staring, some filming on their phones, but no one was moving to help. James felt that familiar tug in his chest. James stared at the screen, overwhelmed by a sense of connection he hadn't expected. It was no longer about helping one stranger. It was about understanding that every act, big or small, could ripple through someone's life in ways he might never fully see. That night, as he lay in bed, He thought about all the people he had passed by in the past, the ones he didn't stop for, the ones he didn't notice, the ones who might have needed a hand, a word, a smile. A pang of regret hit him, but it wasn't crushing, it was motivating. He wanted to be better, to do more, to ensure that his actions counted. He remembered Emma's words. Kindness doesn't go unnoticed. They were no longer just words written in a notebook. They were a mantra guiding him, a truth he had lived and now fully understood. He realized that faith in humanity wasn't about expecting everyone to be good. It was about choosing to be good himself, even when the world seemed indifferent, even when others didn't notice or appreciate it. It was in these moments, in the small yet profound acts of courage and care, that he discovered the real power of kindness. And James knew that his journey had only just begun. The city outside his window seemed less daunting now, less cold, because he had seen firsthand that connection, empathy, and courage still existed. Sometimes in the smallest, most unexpected encounters, if you think acts of kindness are small or meaningless, wait until you see what happens next in James's story *, a week after helping Leo. James woke to a morning that felt heavier than usual. The city was cloaked in mist, and the usual hum of traffic was subdued under the grey sky. As he sipped his coffee, he scrolled through messages from Emma. She had invited him to visit the shelter where she worked, saying that she wanted to show him the difference one person's kindness could make in the lives of many. James hesitated, unsure what to expect. He had helped strangers before, but this felt different. It felt like stepping into someone else's world in a way that could truly test everything he had learned about kindness. By mid-morning, he found himself standing outside the shelter, the building unassuming from the street, yet buzzing with quiet energy inside. Volunteers moved with purpose, staff spoke in calm but urgent tones, and children ran along the halls, laughter mingling with the sounds of small struggles and victories. Emma met him at the door, her face lighting up at the sight of him. "I'm so glad you're here," she said, and immediately he felt the warmth of genuine connection again, like that first Saturday when he helped her carry her bags. She guided him through the shelter, introducing him to residents and volunteers, and he saw firsthand the challenges they faced. People displaced, families fractured, individuals beaten down by life yet determined to survive. It was humbling, almost overwhelming. Emma handed him a box of supplies, asking if he could help distribute them. As he moved through the rooms, handing out blankets, hygiene kits, and warm meals, James saw the impact of even the smallest gestures. Eyes that had been wary, soft as shoulders that carried invisible burdens, straightened. Smiles appeared in places he didn't expect. It hit him. Kindness wasn't just a single act, it was a chain reaction, a ripple that could extend far beyond a single encounter. Then he saw her, a young woman sitting alone in a corner, head bowed, shoulders trembling. James recognized the same fatigue, the same weight in her eyes that he had seen in Emma and in Leo. He approached cautiously, offering a gentle smile and a simple, "Hi, I'm James." The woman looked up, and for a moment her eyes filled with tears. She whispered that she had been struggling to carry her life forward, but some days it felt impossible to continue. Without thinking, James knelt beside her, listening, offering words of encouragement, letting her speak without judgment or interruption. Minutes passed, then hours, yet it felt like mere moments. By the time Emma returned, the woman was smiling faintly, her spirit lifted enough to accept a small blanket James had given her. Emma watched, quietly proud, and later explained that the woman had been in crisis for weeks, almost ready to give up. But that simple moment of attention and care had shifted something in her. James realized then the depth of what he had been part of. One act of helping a stranger had led to another, and another, until it created a wave of hope strong enough to reach someone on the brink of despair. He felt a lump in his throat as he processed the enormity of it, understanding in a way he never had before that kindness was never wasted. Every gesture mattered, every moment counted, and no act of generosity was ever too small. That evening, as he walked home through the misty streets, James felt transformed. He had started with a simple impulse to help a woman carry her bags, and it had led him to witness courage, resilience, and humanity at its most profound. The city, which once seemed cold and impersonal, now pulsed with potential. Every passerby, a story waiting to be noticed, every struggle, an opportunity to make a difference. James understood, finally, why Emma had invited him here. to show him that the faith he was rebuilding wasn't just about strangers smiling back at him or messages of thanks. It was about understanding that every single act of kindness, no matter how ordinary, could spark hope in a world that desperately needed it. He knew that he would never view the city the same way again, never walk past someone in need without stopping, because he had seen the extraordinary power of ordinary human connection. And in that realization, his faith in humanity was no longer fragile or tentative. It was steadfast, alive, and glowing, because he had lived it, felt it, and witnessed it in others. If you think a small act can't make a difference, stay tuned for the final chapter. Because what happens next will restore your faith in humanity in ways you might never expect. The next morning, James woke with a quiet excitement, a sense that something extraordinary was about to happen, though he didn't know exactly what. The city outside his window buzzed as usual, people rushing, cars honking, lives moving forward as if he hadn't just spent a week witnessing hope in action. He thought about Emma, about Leo, about the woman in the shelter whose life had been touched by something as simple as listening and caring. He realized that what had begun as a single act, helping a stranger carry her bags, had become a chain of events that no one could have predicted. A cascade of kindness that was changing lives, including his own. As he walked through the streets, he noticed small signs that the city was slowly shifting. A man helped a woman pick up fallen groceries. A teenager offered his umbrella to an elderly neighbor. And everywhere he looked, he saw the quiet, unassuming power of people noticing each other. James smiled, feeling that warmth in his chest, the same one he had felt that first Saturday morning. Then, as he rounded the corner near his favorite cafe, he noticed a commotion. A small crowd had gathered around an elderly man who had collapsed. On the sidewalk, without hesitation, James pushed through and knelt beside him, checking his pulse and calling for help. Someone had already called an ambulance, but James stayed, holding the man's hand, comforting him until the paramedic arrived. When the man opened his eyes and gave a faint smile, James felt a deep, profound satisfaction, not because of recognition, but because he knew that he had made a real difference. The paramedics thanked him, and as the man was carefully lifted into the ambulance, James noticed the grateful eyes of bystanders. No one applauded, no one filmed the moment, but he felt it nonetheless, the silent acknowledgement that caring mattered, that noticing mattered, that kindness had a weight heavier than gold. Later that afternoon, James met Emma at the shelter. Again, she had a surprise for him, something she said would fully restore his faith in humanity. They walked together into a room where dozens of children and adults were gathered. There were people he had helped indirectly, the young mother he had guided weeks ago, volunteers whose lives had been touched by the ripple of his small acts, and even Leo and his mother, who waved excitedly. The room was alive with laughter, gratitude, and stories shared. Emma turned to James, her eyes glistening. "Do you see?" she said softly. "All of this, every smile, every moment of hope, started with one act too, helping me carry those bags. You may have thought it was nothing, but look at what it sparked." James felt tears prick his eyes. It was overwhelming, humbling, joyful. He had never imagined that such a simple gesture could touch so many lives, could create a network of hope, care, and compassion so tangible that it could be felt across the city. In that moment, James understood what it truly meant to restore faith in humanity, not just seeing it, but actively participating in it. He realized that humanity wasn't lost. It had been alive all along, hidden in small gestures, waiting for someone to notice, to act, to care. That Saturday, when he chose to help a stranger carry her bags, he had unknowingly lit a spark, one that had grown into a flame bright enough to illuminate the hearts of countless people around him. James knew he would never forget it. As the day ended, he walked home slowly, the weight of the city's burdens now mingled with the warmth of shared humanity. He reflected on every moment, the simple acts, the small kindnesses, the courage to help even when it was inconvenient. Each had mattered, and together they had proven that one person's choice to care could indeed change the world, or at least someone's world. And so, he smiled, heart full, eyes bright.